Hello, everybody. Welcome to Two-Way Tonight. I'm Mark Halperin. Thank you for joining. Um, it's summer, and sometimes news slows down a bit in the summer, and the president making his way back at this hour to the United States, he certainly created a lot of news on the trip related to trade. And in Europe today, Scott Bessent concluded talks, at least for now, with China. No huge readout from that, but he plans to brief the president tomorrow. So that's happening. Middle East developments, where the United Kingdom now says that they're going to recognize a Palestinian state, as some other European countries have said they're going to do, unless the Israelis back off what they're doing. So there are some stories, and we'll talk about those as time allows. But there are two big percolating stories. First of all, Epstein. A lot of developments on the Epstein front, and I know this community is kind of divided. Some of you would like to talk about Epstein every night for an hour, and some of you less so. But there are developments today that are newsworthy, and the president contributed to that by talking, and I'll run through those. And then there's still this other issue of the president and his allies feeling strongly that there was an attempt to destroy his presidency by Barack Obama and others, and the president talked about that today in a new interview. So I'm open-minded about both stories. I really am, and I'd like everybody in the country to be fact-based on those. So the first thing I want to try to do may not work, but we'll give it a try. If you're on here and you want to speak briefly, you don't have to give a speech, but briefly about those, either or both of those stories, what you think about the Epstein story, and what you think about, I don't know what to call the other story, the alleged treasonous conspiracy to destroy Donald Trump. If you want to speak about one of those and be part of a conversation from the group, raise your hand now if you're here on the Two-Way platform. Let's see how many people want to do that. Maybe none of you do, but I'd like as many of you who are willing to talk about that to raise your electronic hand and be part of that conversation. I'll wait for a bit and see if people raise their hand. If you're watching on X or on YouTube, you can't raise your hand to be part of this conversation, but you certainly can comment in the chat. Just don't put smack in the chat. And that instruction, that admonition, that request extends for the full hour of the program. We have three great guests joining us in a moment to talk about all the day's news. And I'll run through the day's news, but I'm hoping to get 6 hands up. I got 3 up. Hoping to get 6 hands up of folks who want to tell us what they think about Epstein and what they think about whatever the other thing is called. So we got 4. I need 2 more. I got 5. All men, but can't control for that. One more. Get one more. I'm sure we're going to get one more. So I'm going to bring you folks in. So let's have a conversation, and we're going to start talking about Epstein. And just tell me, as I unmute you, just tell me your general thoughts about whether you think this is an important story. If so, why, and what you're interested in hearing more about. And if not, why not? And let's start with Epstein. I'll unmute you all and just calling you one by one. And again, just start answering that question. Is this to you an important story? And do you, and to the extent you think it's an important story, why? And feel free to jump in if other folks say things you're interested in. You should follow up. So let's start with Tom. Tom, is the Epstein story an important story to you? And if so, why? Oh, Tom is the only one probably not unmuted. Go ahead, Tom. No, Tom, you got to unmute. All right, while Tom's unmuting, Evan, you go first. Tell us, is it an important story to you? And if so, why?
I think it's more important than I give it credit for. Quick question. You've said a couple of times when you've been asked, or the idea has been mentioned that if there was a there, that the Biden administration would have taken advantage of it, and you've pushed back on that. And
Yeah.
you said for a variety of reasons, and maybe I missed it, but I remember this morning you said it. Can you just elaborate on some of those reasons? Because that
Sure.
might help me understand it a little more.
Sure. It's possible that they would. Here are some reasons they may not have. I don't know. I'm speculating. One is the Attorney General for Joe Biden was a kind of a by the book, not political guy. And he may not have done it. He squelched it. 2, there may be stuff in there that pertains to Donald Trump's personal life in a way that they just didn't think it was the right thing to do. They thought it was crooked pool. There also may be prominent Democrats named in there. And they might have been concerned that if they, sort of a conspiracy amongst elites, that if they opened that Pandora's box, that a lot of Democrats would be harmed. Those are three concrete things. But there may be something, that I don't know, that I have no access to. So
Okay.
let me keep going around. Matt, is it an important story? And if so, why?
I would say it's not important in terms of the details, but important symbolically. And I think something that has been felt, especially with people I've talked to, is that there's two tiers of justice, and I think that a lot of people feel there's two different set of rules. I mean, it's the same idea of are they that pissed about Epstein, but it bakes into, you have the 2008 financial crisis and what one person went to jail for that, but then it will be a low level Ponzi scheme and someone's out there serving 30 years. So it's just that idea of two tiers of justice that I think
Yep.
get me more upset than the details.
Thank you, Matt. Rex, is it an important story? And if so, why?
It's important because of what Matt said, two tiers of justice. The other reason it's important is that I've always questioned whether he committed suicide or not, and who might have been behind his death if he didn't commit suicide.
Okay. Dustin, important story. If so, why?
Yeah, it's important, but not in the grand scheme of things in terms it's not going to affect grocery prices. It's not going to impact national security. But to Matt's point, it speaks to corruption. It speaks to the two-tier justice system and wealthy people getting away with things that, the average Joe would never get away with. And I think now it's becoming more important indicator of the hypocrisy of the media. I saw that CBS News did an extensive deep dive on the prison film or video today. They never touched this story for the past however many years, but now that Trump is in the crosshairs, you have CBS News of all outlets doing a deep dive into, the missing minute and the angle of the video, the person that walked on frame for a moment. So again, it just speaks to the hypocrisy of the media.
Tom, thank you, Dustin. Tom, important story. If so, why?
For a different reason. I think that ever since the election and the campaign promises of transparency and everything else has been so transparent, everything else is coming out, all the records and files and investigations of the different Doge and so forth, people are accustomed to that. And it's one particular thing or these two particular things that people just want to see the truth. Let the chips fall where they fall. Put the truth out as long as it doesn't affect the victims, and if there is a victim issue of where they can't show the records, then explain that and just be transparent with that. That's all I think that most people want. It's just not really the details themselves, but what's the truth of the whole matter?
Okay.
Whether it be the actual, was he killed or not, and was, these records forged or not, and so forth. That's what I think is it's the whole image of transparency, not the individual story itself.
Great. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to bring in two veteran focus group moderators, Democrat Steve Elmendorf, Republican Mark Bednar, and ask them to ask you all some questions, lead a conversation. While that happens, I would love 5 women who are on this Zoom here on the two-way platform to raise your hands if you're willing to talk about the same subject, because I don't want to just hear from men on this. In general, wouldn't like to just hear from men. So if you're a woman and you're on here and you're willing to talk, please raise your hand. Let's bring in Steve and Mark. Gentlemen, we'll start with Steve. Ask away. If you got questions for the group or for any individual you want to follow up on, please do.
Oh, I agree entirely with what Tom just said. I think transparency is the issue here. He said, I hear constantly from Trump administration officials that the spokespeople that this is the most transparent presidency ever. They put out, millions of pages of documents on JFK and MLK, and I don't know if they've done RFK yet, but they said they will. And so I don't understand the reluctance on this front. Like, just put it out. Like, obviously, you have to redact the victims' information and protect, minors, et cetera. But I don't really understand what the big fuss is about. Like, just put it all out. Like they said they want to put it out. People in Congress want them to put it out. Like, let's just do it.
All right, Mark.
They talk about more important things. I think
Yeah.
what's happening in Gaza is more important. I think what's happening with international trade is more important. I think there's a lot of more important issues out there that this is distracting people from, and so we should move on.
Mark, either comment on what Steve said or ask a question of the group or an individual.
I would love to ask the group a question, starting with Tom. Is so for several years there's the buildup to the idea that there's an Epstein list, and that was part of a conversation for a long time. There's an Epstein list. The DOJ and the FBI publicly concluded that they reviewed all the evidence and that there is nothing to kind of extend in terms of what they can reveal. So what for the group is evidence? If they're saying there's not a list and you're saying show there's not a list, how can the FBI, the Justice Department, the administration demonstrate that they revealed the whole truth? Where's the bottom?
Great question. Tom
I
first
think
and then
the
others.
bottom would be the records from the grand jury investigation. And then someone would say there is no records from that. But don't be secretive about the grand jury records and not release them. That's what I'm, to me, it's not about the list itself. I don't really care about the list. I just want to have the information to make it public, what can be made public, and answer the question and move on. Exactly
again,
what, yeah.
So an addendum to that, which kind of feeds into my first question and open the floor to everyone who's willing. If they say this is all that can be made public, then there's always a further step, right? Why can't this be made public? What are you hiding behind what can't be made public?
Well, instead of answering the question, can only be made public, explain the why this can only be made public. For instance, if you're exposing some victim or something to the public, most people, reasonable people would say, yeah, you can't do that. That makes total sense. It's not a question. I don't think it's, from my view, I don't think it's a question of hiding. But I'm sure there's always people saying, oh, you didn't release it because you're trying to hide something. But if you would just be transparent and answer the question straight up, we cannot release it due to other public, other victims, underage victims or whatever in the Epstein files, or if it's national security in the other situation, then just say that and then move on.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that great question?
Yeah, for me, I think the bottom of it is this idea of blackmail as well. So not that I need a whole list of names, but did he have dirt on people? Was he a foreign intelligence asset that could have been used to influence certain decisions? Now, I've come to the conclusion that I don't think I'm going to get that answer from Trump or the Trump administration. But even some innuendo that is the case would help, because I think the big thing that I'm struggling to wrap my mind around is getting an answer to Acosta saying in 2007 that he was a foreign intelligence asset, that he had all these cameras set up all around his apartment. So I think I could dive into the weeds a bit more, but the idea is, was he being blackmailed? Not necessarily who he was on, if he was on the list.
Right. All right, gentlemen, stand by. I'm going to take y'all off because I want to we've got almost have 5 ladies with hands up. We've got 4, and I bet we get another one. And I want to bring them in to be part of the conversation, and we'll toggle folks back and forth. I will get to the news in just a moment because there is news on the Epstein front. But let's bring in another group, and that's Alex and Cynthia and Ellen and Jacqueline, and I'm looking for one more woman to raise your hand while we unmute here. So please do. There's Katie. Thank you, Katie. All right, ladies, same question to you to start, and then Steve is going to, instead of being hyper partisan and argumentative, is going to lead the focus group. Tell us, do you think is the Epstein story important to you, and if so, why? And if not, why not? Cynthia.
I'm mildly interested, and that's all. It's really not that important. It's way down on my list of things I want to hear about when I listen to you or I listen to the news. And frankly, I'm tired of it.
Okay, thank you. Katie.
I find it more irritating, just because I don't like the constant changing of the narrative. Like you were talking about this morning, how all of a sudden we are hearing about the reason why he stopped being friends with Epstein. I don't like how it just it's like you're not you, like that he's like fishing for a way out of it, and I'm tired of that. And I really didn't pay that much attention to the Epstein issue at the time, but like I feel like it's brought so much light to it. Not that I didn't care about it, but I just didn't. It just wasn't on my radar at the moment. And then it's just he's drawing so much attention to it, and it's like I don't understand. We've drawn attention to every conspiracy theory known to man. Like I feel like, but we can't address this one, and we can't just put out the information that we touted for years.
Thank you,
So I
Katie.
guess it is irritating.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Jacqueline.
I think it's important beyond being a massive crime story because of what it highlights about how you can get away with things if you're very rich and powerful and connected. I think, though, that it's been overcovered in a way that's either overhyping the importance of the story or trivializing it, because it seems like it's been overdone on the media for ratings and when this is about abuse. And that makes me very uncomfortable.
Thank you. Ellen.
Yeah, I agree with everything that she just said. It's driving me crazy that you have how many men, we don't know how many men were involved with these underage girls, and there's been no accountability for it. And it's just very frustrating to see nothing has happened. And so it's important to me for that reason.
Thank you, Ellen. Alex.
I was originally very interested in this story when like the first Netflix special or whatever came out 5 years ago. And it was one of those stories that kind of got wrapped up in also the Nickelodeon debacle and the Me Too stuff. And there was a lot of stuff coming out around kids and sexual predators and things like that. And as a mom, I care a lot about that stuff. But now it's shifted to this weird political football that people keep throwing back and forth to each other. And I am inclined to now tune it out because I feel like we're never getting answers that we want for the reasons we want them. And there's so many more issues that are affecting young people and kids and families today that I want the administration to be focused on. That, you know, if all we're going to get is that Netflix special and that's it, then let's move on and let's start sorting things out for the kids in our country.
Thank you, Alex. Well said. Steve.
Would anyone like to hear a tape of the interview that the Deputy Attorney General had with Ms. Maxwell, since she seems to know so much and he spent a day and a half of his time talking to her?
Yeah. Raise your hand if you'd like to hear that, see that video or hear that audio.
Yes.
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve. Keep going.
And does anyone think it would be appropriate to pardon her?
No.
No.
I would pardon her if she gave us a list of every powerful man involved in hurting young women.
And is there anything Congress should give her immunity? What some Republicans seem to have suggested? Or her lawyer has asked for? Sorry.
No.
Probably not.
Mark, questions for the group?
I guess I'll pose the same thing to this group. For those who are interested in clarity, you say you're interested in the story, but not you don't want the dead horse to continue to be beaten. But what would to you be seen as a resolution if the administration says this is all we have, we don't have anything further, this is the testimony that we were given, there's no list, this is all the information, this is where we're at? Do you trust the administration at their word? And if not, why not? And if so, why so?
Everybody just jump in as you wish to answer that. Great questions.
I would say I would be fine if they said that their accusations were made, but there's no evidence. And so that's as far as we can go. I'm going to trust that would be correct information. But if there is evidence, like especially video evidence that can corroborate stories from victims, then I would like to understand why we're not pushing forward in charging these people.
Great, Ellen. Thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in on Mark's question?
Mark,
Go ahead, Katie.
would that information be able to be corroborated with Maxwell? I think that would be the solution to me. Like if what they provided could be verified, then I would feel good about that.
Okay. Everybody stay with us. Let's look at some of the news from today, and people can chime in. Mark and Steve and all of you can chime in. First, and some of this has been mentioned, but here's number one. Maxwell is asking for a bunch of stuff in exchange for testimony before Congress. She wants immunity. She wants the questions in advance. She wants to delay her testimony until after her appeals are done. And she also wants it not to be conducted at the prison. Seems like a long list of demands that she's unlikely to get. Steve, thoughts on that?
Seems like somebody who doesn't want to testify. She set up a bunch of obstacles which cannot be met, probably.
Yeah. Mark.
What I don't get as a non-lawyer is how did none of this come up like when she was first being tried?
Yeah. It's a great question.
I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, it's a great question. Ladies, any of you want to comment on the Maxwell immunity requests?
She could just be trying to play hardball to negotiate for a lighter sentence or something more that the government considers more reasonable.
Yeah, you're right. Could be negotiating. All right. Now, this morning on morning meeting, we talked about how President Trump yesterday provided an answer to why he and Epstein had a falling out that was at odds with what his advisors had previously said. Today on Air Force One, flying back from Scotland, he gave a new account that he's never given before, as far as I know, which kind of marries the old account. It marries the notion that he said yesterday that his relationships falling out was based on Epstein stealing employees with the notion of the nature of the employees who Epstein allegedly stole. Here's the audio of President Trump on Air Force One explaining the history of his relationship with Epstein. Number two, please.
Pretty soon. We think pretty soon. Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. I'm just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women? Were some of them young women? Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were. Yes, they were young women? What did they do? In the spa. In the spa? Yeah, people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago. And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told them, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, does that include Virginia Giuffre?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
All right, let me ask first show of hands, all five of you, that'd be Mark and Steve, and then Alex, Katie, and Jacqueline. Would you say that President Trump's, the nature and tone and kind of mood of his responses on these questions over the last week, do they tend to make you be more suspicious rather than less? Raise your hand if they make you, if the way he's conducted himself makes you more suspicious about something he might be hiding. Steve says yes. Katie says yes. All right. Nobody else says yes to that. Okay. Let's keep going. Here is Michael Smerconish in conversation with me on the new episode of Next Up on his view of what is going on with Donald Trump and his evasions on this matter. Number three, please.
Okay. Two possibilities. One, because there's something nefarious there. I don't think that's the case because although he has a fondness well documented for women and back in the day was quite the playboy and so forth, I don't think it's part of Trump's MO like it was Epstein's MO to be attracted to girls, young girls. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something embarrassing in those files. I don't think so. And therefore, I come to the conclusion that it's just part of his Roy Cohn-inspired DNA of deny, 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 make him prove it, and never, never retreat. It served him well, and also, Mark, because perhaps nobody in the inner circle wants to tell him what I just told him because they don't want to speak truth to power, always for fear of being X'd out of the inner circle.
All right, let's go around and tell me why you think President Trump has been not fully forthcoming on this matter. What's your gut about why he's not been fully forthcoming? Ellen.
I actually have my own opinion on this. I wonder if perhaps he was aware of things going on with underage women and that he never reported it. He never told anyone.
Mhm.
And that is a very difficult thing to be living with for the rest of your life, knowing that young girls were being harmed and you did nothing. And so if it were me, I'd be wanting to push it away and not deal with it and distract and do other things. That's my theory.
Thank you, Ellen. Mark, what's your explanation?
I think the stink of Epstein and the scandal and the story has just been around in kind of the American psyche for a half decade. And so just be a part of it, it's pretty understandable to be reflexively disinterested in wanting to talk about it.
Yep.
That being said, do I think that he did anything wrong? No. And the point that he made on Air Force One, the only reason that it's getting any coverage is because it's new, not because it's remotely, I don't think it's all that interesting. If he said that a month ago, we would have stopped talking about it 29 days ago. But just because it's new, and they continue to provide new sound bites on the matter, like that's where the problem is, not the content itself.
Understood. Alex, why do you think the president's been less than forthcoming?
I think he has friends that are tied up in this. That's what I think.
Okay. Katie?
I think a combination of what Ellen and Alex said. Like I think he knew more than he wants to let on about it. I don't think he actually did anything himself. I just think he has that guilt, but I also do think it has to do with friends and donors and potential library things. And so that's my thought.
Great, Katie. Jacqueline?
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah, of course.
I do think the country would come together if we got one Democrat and one Republican in handcuffs for this. And I would love to see that.
Thank you, Alex. Jacqueline?
I agree with a combination with Katie. I also think he may have actually done something, but I'm actually less suspicious of him because he said he's admitted to knowing something.
Right. Okay. Steve?
I think he's more involved than he lets on. I don't accuse him of doing anything necessarily sexual. I just think he was in a world around Giuffre, as were a lot of other people apparently, and I think more people knew more than they've let on, and it's at the least it's embarrassing, at the most it's like deeply troubling.
Yeah. So from a moral and a politically tactical point of view, lots of questions about how much the Democratic Party should be talking about this. One of the top Democrats in the country today said something pretty remarkable on Twitter about Donald Trump and the Epstein matter. Number 4, please. Chuck Schumer tweeted this. Number 4, please. You might need to make it bigger for my agent
Some of us
eyes.
are old, Mark.
Yeah. Here we go. Breaking. This is from Chuck Schumer. I'm fighting for the FBI to conduct a counterintelligence threat assessment to determine the risk posed if a foreign adversary were to gain access to the Epstein files. Whatever is in the Epstein files is clearly concerning enough that Donald Trump is running scared. Our adversaries could try to use it to gain influence and hurt America and Americans. Remarkable. First of all, I love the use of the word fight. That's a good fighting. And then the assertion that Donald Trump's running scared. Start with Steve. Steve, what do you think of your friend Chuck Schumer's weighing in on that matter and raising this concern about security?
Well, it's obviously a legitimate concern. This is an administration that hasn't been paid much attention to security and has allowed lots of foreign governments access to things they shouldn't have access to. So it's a legit concern. Again, the answer to all this concern is put it all out. Like, just put it out. Like, what are you hiding?
Yeah, ladies, any of you cheering on Chuck Schumer in this? Do you think that's a legitimate concern, or do you think he's just doing that for political purposes?
I never thought about that aspect. But I mean, it's a good point. But I always get a little anxious when anybody makes a tweet like that because I'd rather them not give ideas to
Yeah,
other countries to do that. But it's a good point.
yeah. Alex, you think that's political or a genuine concern?
I truly, if you weren't talking about Epstein 5 years ago, I do not care about your thoughts today.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, here's Speaker Johnson.
Can I
Hey, go
real
ahead.
quick, Mark?
Yes, sir.
I apologize, but
Yeah.
Midwest Nice, I have to apologize
Yeah.
for wanting to raise a point.
No, jump right in. We're having a conversation. Nobody
Yeah,
needs.
I think it's
apologize.
important to remember back when then candidate Trump told Russia, if you're listening, please
Yeah.
check into Hillary Clinton's email.
Yeah.
And the entire media establishment
Yeah.
and elected Democrats went berserk, basically saying that he's encouraging the
Right.
Russians to hack her emails. And so now we have Chuck Schumer saying, wink, wink, foreign adversaries. We don't want you to have to get access to this. Like they're not that dissimilar of comments. It's obviously tongue in cheek, and
Yeah.
therefore I would argue like very political. But the fact that it is not receiving the same outcry as basically inviting foreign adversaries into hacking our institutions, like that to me is pretty striking.
Yeah, I hear you. Here is the Speaker of the House speaking of the issue just raised about Democrats not raising this issue for the 4 years that Joe Biden was in office. Here's the Speaker of the House. I would say this is Louisiana indignant. Number 6, please.
I want to say this about my colleagues Ro Khanna and Jim McGovern and Hakeem Jeffries and so many others. They've tweeted about Epstein countless times in the last 2 weeks, but go back and look at their social media accounts, we have, and their public comments. They had exactly 0 posts on the subject for the last 4 years of the Biden administration. Interesting, isn't it?
All right, let's go around and do a one name answer for everybody. There's a tragic story and a horrible story. Who's a good guy or good gal? Who's someone who you think in the media, in politics, anywhere, who's someone who you think is helping bring out the truth in a constructive way? Who's somebody who's helping bring out the truth in a constructive way? Steve.
I think Ro Khanna is actually being very constructive, and he's working with a fellow member of Congress who's a Republican in a bipartisan way to argue for transparency.
Okay, Ro Khanna. Ellen?
I am not sure. I'd have to think about that.
Okay.
I appreciate you in the media and like Michael Smerconish speaking very differently about it, not just the talking points.
Yeah. Okay. Jacqueline?
Too many people to count, but we would be on the list if I were to make one.
Thank you. Katie?
Did you say media or in
Any media, politics,
in office?
anyone in the national town square who you think is being constructive and trying to fight for the victims, fight for truth, try for disclosure in a productive way?
Well, I would definitely say 2A, Megyn Kelly. Your interview with Ro Khanna, I mean, he really does seem like he is out to try to find out the right answer.
Great. Thank you for that. And thank you for watching. Mark Bednar.
It's kind of hard. It's interesting to say, but I go back to, I think that the memo that Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and the Justice Department put together, I think that got beat up a little unfairly. The fact that they reviewed evidence the way that they did, and then they ultimately, even those who said that they were pretty hawkish on quote Epstein files, to then say basically come out with an admission that we reviewed all the evidence and here's where we're at.
Yeah.
I think that deserves a little bit more credit than kind of the bashing that it got.
If it turns out to be true, I agree with you. Absolutely. Have to see if it turns out to be true. Alex?
For the news, definitely 2A, but for the things I care about, Dr. Drew.
All right. Susan, thank you for joining. Who would you say is doing a good job?
I agree with all the people that have been named, but I also think Steve Bannon wants to know the truth. And he's trying to get President Trump to be strong enough to just give it to us. We can take it.
All right. Thank you. All right. One more thing that happened today, and this was mentioned before. This is number 5. CBS News has an investigative piece on the prison video. And of course, as Mark alluded to the FBI release, that suggested that the video conclusively showed Epstein did not commit suicide. And CBS says that the video is not as conclusive as the FBI suggested, including that there's no clear view of the cell door of Epstein's cell. So let me ask it this way, show of hands. You have three choices: sure, or not sure, or think he killed himself or didn't kill himself. Raise your hand if you think Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. You're sure he committed suicide. Raise your hand if you're sure he committed suicide. Okay. Raise your hand if you're sure he was killed. If you're sure he was killed. All right. Raise your hand if you lean towards thinking he committed suicide. Lean towards that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And raise your hand if you lean towards thinking he was killed. Okay. Alex, unmute and tell us why you think you lean that way.
I lean that way because I'm generally just distrustful of the prison system. So that's, I think, much harder to kill yourself.
Steve, why do you think he committed suicide? Probably.
I'd like to see the 3-minute gap. I'd like to figure out what was going on with the 3-minute gap. But, the vast preponderance of the evidence is that he committed suicide.
Right. Okay. One more thing. I want to go around and ask everybody. If President Trump called you and said, I saw you on two-way, you were incredibly insightful on this, and I want your advice. What's the piece of advice you'd give him about how to deal with the Epstein matter? Okay. How should he deal with it? Mark.
I still think there's a role to work with Congress here. I don't know if it's within depositions within oversight, but get the Senate Judiciary, House Judiciary together. They're the ones with jurisdiction over DOJ and the FBI, and go through what can be released and what can't be released. And then to what many in the chat have said, or many in the program have already said, we just want to know where we can go, where we can't. I think there's still opportunities to say, here's what we know, here's what we can release, here's what we can't release and why. Like the fact that everything that's kind of occurred within the last three or 4 weeks is not revelations in and of itself in terms of evidence of anything. It's just new.
Yeah.
And so it's new tidbits. It's kind of like when a leaked tape comes out of a private conversation. It might not lead to anything, but because it sounds new and it's like, I just think like there's a way to rip this Band-Aid off and get it over with without just saying release the files.
Fantastic. Ellen, advice for the president.
I agree with everything Mark just said. Just release what you can. Be mindful of the victims and making sure that their names are not released, and just put it all out there. And then we can move on.
Katie, advice for President Trump.
I second what Mark said. But I also think, if he could sit down with an honest broker and do an interview and just answer questions, not in a press conference format, just in a
probably coming on two-way would be the best way to do it.
I still don't understand why that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Sean Spicer should be the hookup. But
all right, Jacqueline, what would you tell the president to do to address it in the public interest?
Same as what the other three said, but also I would say if you really didn't do anything, then just admit everything about your associations with Epstein to clear the air and reassure people.
Great.
Rather than avoid the issue.
Thank you. Susan.
I would say, Mr. President, I didn't even care about the Epstein files. Didn't care until Pam Bondi started messing with everything. And I'm like, okay, now all of a sudden I really care about this. So release everything you can and let the chips fall where they may.
Thank you. Alex.
I would say do what you do best. Bend every rule you can to get all the information out, and then tie it to a piece of legislation that everyone will like.
Steve.
Just put it all out. I don't get why we can't put it all out. Again, protect the victims and put it all out and move on. Like Donald Trump has shown that he can survive virtually any charge against him. And, if there's something in there that's not great for him, I'm sure he'll figure out a way to say why or whatever he did, but just put it all out. This whole getting in contortions and all people back and forth, and I can't do the show this or show that. Other than the names of victims and protecting victims, everything else should just go out.
Mark.
But lastly, all this disclosure and ripping off the Band-Aid and setting parameters of what you can and cannot release, it still comes with the fact that you are still, the administration is still in a position where they have to prove that that something does not exist, which is an impossibility that ultimately there's going to be people who are not going to believe that. So regardless of the path forward, they have to understand that that dynamic is going to be permanent, and you just have to live with it and just have courage and move on.
Yeah. Fantastic. Ladies, I couldn't be more grateful to you for being part of the community and for sharing your voices tonight. And we say our tagline to a conversations like no other. I've not heard a conversation like this about this, and that's the testament to the voices you added to this, and the wisdom and the thoughtfulness and the lack of political agenda. So thank you all, and thanks to the panel we had on before you. Very grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to switch topics to something that is also incredibly important, and also will be a conversation like no other. Mark and Steve are going to stay with us. There's a extremely important need in this country to increase confidence in democracy. Incredibly important, and particularly after the 2000 election, the Trump elections, where the elections have been close, and there have been questions raised about whether the vote was cast and counted correctly. We need some innovation. We need some people to think anew about how to increase confidence in the system and participation in the system. We also know that casting ballots on election day in person is the preference of many, but it's not consistent with the advantages of the digital age, that there must be a more modern way. Just as if Steve needs $100, he doesn't go down to the Safeway and cash a check for $100. He goes to the ATM, or really, Steve doesn't need $100 because he pays for everything with his iPhone. So we should all be looking for modern ideas. We should all be looking for people who are willing to invest time in the public education required to move us to a more public system, a more accountable system. Our next guest is someone who has put his money where his mouth is and his time and bandwidth where his mouth is to try to make voting in this country more rational, more accessible, more secure, and more likely to install in people confidence that voting in this country is being done the right way for democracy, not for any individual or any political party. Joining us now, ladies and gentlemen, Bradley Tusk, longtime successful businessman, successful political operative, and runs a hell of a bookstore too. Bradley,
appreciate that. I would say the bookstore is definitely not successful on the business front, but it is a passion project.
It's a great bookstore in the southern part of Manhattan, and Bradley, thank goodness, made so much money working for his business clients that he can have as a loss leader a bookstore that will never make $1, but is a great bookstore. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Do you know Steve and Mark?
Yeah, I do. I know Steve for sure. I'm not sure if Mark and I have met before, but nice to see you.
All right.
Where's
Bradley,
your bookstore?
What'd you say?
Where's your bookstore?
It's on Orchard Street between Houston and Stanton. It's called P&T Knitwear. Yeah. It's a bookstore. It's a podcast studio, amphitheater, and cafe. It's fantastic as long as you don't mind losing a lot of money.
Steve, the bookstore itself and the block it's on are so cool that even you may not be cool enough for that block, but you should try it out. It's a great place. And if you want to do a podcast in Manhattan, no greater place to do it.
It is the only free podcast studio that I'm aware of in New York. You just go on our website, ptnetwork.com, and use it.
Maybe I'll start doing the show from there.
We would love that. We'll get you a regular slot.
All right. Thank you. All right. So Bradley's idea, which he's going to explain to you, is to vote on your phone. Yep. And I'll just say the irony and the frustration that I know he feels, but I'll explain it for him, is Bradley's trying to restore confidence in the system. And the biggest challenge he has is people are worried about electronic voting. They're worried about it, no paper ballot, and all the concerns about hacking and about multiple voting and all those things. Bradley's thought through it all. So Bradley, explain what you're trying to do and where you stand in your project, please.
Thank you. And thanks for the chance to be here. So look, I don't think anyone either participating or watching this, isn't familiar with the fact that most of our elections, because of gerrymandering, are really determined in primaries. Primary turnout's typically about 10 to 15%, especially in state and local elections. And those voters tend to be the most extreme, the far right the far left or special interests know how to move money and votes in low turnout elections. And as a result, we get effectively one of two types of government, either the chaos and dysfunction of DC or totally one-sided governments, whether that's the state of Texas on the right or the city of San Francisco on the left. And given that Americans actually do agree on most things, there's probably 70% of us that can agree on a reasonable solution to guns or climate or immigration or education or healthcare or whatever it might be. We have the opportunity to get stuff done, but we don't actually do it because the only people who vote are at the extremes, and those people dictate what elected officials do. And as a result, we have this sort of falling apart dysfunctional democracy. But we don't have to. So I ran a lot of the campaigns to legalize Uber and ride sharing all over the US over a decade ago now. And at the time, we were this tiny little tech startup, and taxi was a really powerful industry. But the way that we beat them is that we were able to make it possible for our customers through the app to tell their elected officials, hey, I like this Uber thing, please leave it alone. And millions of people did, and we won in every single jurisdiction in the country. And at some point, I started thinking, like, well, why can't they vote like this? And so that's what led to the Mobile Voting Project. The first thing we did was test the hypothesis. So out of my foundation, this is totally philanthropic, by the way, we paid for elections in 7 different states where either deployed military or people with disabilities were able to vote in real elections on their phones. Not surprisingly, you make something a lot easier. You put it on someone's phone, more people do it. Next step was to build technology that could be used securely at scale. So we're at the very tail end of that right now. I'll quickly walk you through how it works. I think that's important, which is, so let's just use me as an example. I'm sitting here in Manhattan. I'd go on the App Store. I would download the New York City Board of Elections app. And the first thing that they would do is say, okay, is Bradley really a registered voter here in New York City? Put in my address, fine. Then is Bradley really Bradley? So the first thing is multi-factor authentication. So that's like when you forget your Google password, they send you a code, you punch it in, same thing here. Then biometric screening. So take a scan of your face, match it up against your ID. We've now established I'm really me. The ballot comes up on the screen, and the ballot itself is sort of simple and straightforward. But whenever you're ready and you hit submit, 3 things happen. First, the ballot's encrypted. Second, it's anonymized. And third, you get a tracking code like if it were a FedEx package. Goes back to the Board of Elections, and they air gap it. So they take it offline completely. Once it's completely disconnected, then they decrypt your ballot. Then a paper copy of the ballot is printed out. That gets mixed in with all of the other ballots. You can see where your ballot stands because the tracking code will show you that it was received, tabulated, printed, and so on. And the underlying code itself is totally open source. So anybody can audit it, anybody could verify it. It's totally transparent. We've been building this for the last 4 years. All of the code that we're building is going up on GitHub, which just means it will be free for any government in the world to use. They just have to go online and take the code. And then now we're in phase 3, which is starting to give Americans the right and the ability to actually vote in elections on their phones. We're starting at the municipal level. We think it makes sense to start local, mayor, council, school board, things like that. And so we're starting to work with different cities around the country around running legislation that would authorize mobile voting for municipal elections. Yeah, and to me, this is the only scalable solution out there to democracy. I think we can't really fix the polarization without getting meaningfully more turnout, especially in primaries. You can't do that without meeting the people where they are, and that's on their phones. And so that's why we've built, what we believe is really secure technology to do that.
Okay, a few things. We've established Bradley is passionate. We've established he's brilliant. Let's establish your political orientation. Are you currently an independent?
I am. I am.
And you've worked for both Democrats and Republicans, right?
Yeah. When Mike Bloomberg was mayor of New York, I ran his campaign. We ran as a Republican, but I also worked for Chuck Schumer in the Senate. I had the worst job in Washington at the time because I was his comms director. And I was also the deputy governor of Illinois.
Yeah. No, it's not the worst job. It's the most irrelevant job.
The Schumer job?
Because he's his own comms director.
That's true.
Yeah. So again, Bradley's doing this because he thinks it'll help America. He spent a fair amount of his own money to make it happen through the foundation. And I have found that the most skeptical people of this are elites. So luckily we have 2 elites right here. Steve, what are your questions about Bradley's project, and what are your doubts about it, if any?
My doubts are mostly, will it be accepted by people? Like, look, it's actually a good day to ask me this question because I woke up this morning in New York City at 4:30. I drove to Delaware because there's a special election in Delaware where I live, and I needed to go vote in person because there was not time to do an absentee. They have early voting. So I drove 4 hours from New York City to Delaware. I voted, and then I drove 3 hours to Washington. So I spent a lot of time, but it's a special election. It's between a Democrat and Republican, and I thought it was very important that the Democrat win. So it'd be great if I could have just picked up my phone and done that.
Yeah.
And look, as I think about the stuff I do on my phone, I do an enormous amount of sensitive financial transactions on my phone, small, large, credit cards, brokerage accounts, crypto, like you do everything, right?
Yeah.
So why, and I feel safe doing that with with various companies. So why couldn't I feel safe doing it for voting? And I think the answer is probably, as I think about it, it's probably yes, I could.
Okay. Now, you know that people on the far right in particular are worried about, this. Steve, what advice would you have for Bradley to convince skeptics about it? In other words, where do you think where is the bar to convince people? Is it to do some local elections? Is it to make more of the encryption and other safeguards transparent? Like, how do you sell it?
I think you're going to have to do a very big sales job on the sort of multi-factor authenticity. I mean, I think there's some people you're never going to convince because there, frankly, are some people who don't think more people should vote or it shouldn't be easier to vote. But I generally think just like I'm for transparency for all, I'm for voting for all. Like and I don't think with how Donald Trump did in this last election, I think the old conventional wisdom of more people voting is good for Democrats is probably wrong. So let's get everybody participating. And if this is a way to get them to participate, I'm for it.
Mark, are you in the black helicopter tinfoil hat school on this, or you ready to sign up and help Bradley?
Sorry, there were a lot of chemtrails.
Yeah, understood.
Didn't quite hear you. I don't like there's multifacets to this, right? So on one hand, you can buy a car on your phone. You can hire a government affairs expert like me from your phone. Like there's a lot of different things, like as to Steve's point, monetarily, you can do from your phone. But like my two liberal sisters, whom I love very much, I told them to get out and vote on Wednesday, November 7th. So if someone like me is able to execute on something like that, I think there's a lot of questions on what sort of apps that are super similar, that look similar, that where people want to trust to put in their information that is, the top Google result, that they see an ad in their paper, I think while it's intriguing as an idea, the amount of unturned stones and unanswered questions, I think still remains. And, that's just not just me in the black helicopter. I think that's a pretty reasonable question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bradley,
let me answer if I can.
Yes,
so two things. So one, totally, Steve, thank you. And Mark, I get it. That's why the app comes from the government and not from a private company. That's why I did this philanthropically. But also there's something called app attestation, which allows you to verify that the app itself is legitimate. But the most important thing is, Apple and Google, I don't know if you've ever tried to put apps on the App Store before or not. It's a pretty rigorous process, right? And they are very, very incentivized not to let anything on there that doesn't fit the bill and hold up to their testing. And so you can't just put an app on there without anything. It has to meet lots of different standards. But beyond that, Mark, I think you're right in that there's some we don't know. And so that's why I want to start super local, super small. I get that for you guys, Washington is sort of the end all be all. So not talking about Congress or Senate. I don't know if the presidential will ever need it because we have 66% turnout in presidential elections. But in New York City, where I live, we have 7% turnout in city council races. You can win a city council seat with 5,000 or 6,000 votes in a city of 8.5 million people. Even Zoran Mandani, who won the Democratic primary somewhat decisively, got 432,000 votes. That's 5% of the city's population. So 95% of New Yorkers did not pick the person that is most likely going to be running the city for the next 4 to 8 years. And so to me, we have so unrepresentative local democracies and local governments because they're so dominated by either side that sure, there are certainly questions that we have to work through. I think we've answered all of them with our tech, but to sort of accept things the way they are, which in my view is falling apart completely, because you don't want to have to think about things like app attestation. It doesn't make sense.
Bradley, you mentioned that part of the authentication is the facial recognition.
Yeah.
Does that mean the government's going to have everybody's picture?
No, because well, the government has your picture because they have your ID, right? So it does have to match up against that, but it's a separate non-governmental provider that does the identification itself. There are companies like ID.me or UltraPass or who, I don't care who they use, whoever they want to use.
But how do they get the data to verify it? Because now when I vote, they just look at my driver's license, right?
So they in their system are hooked into like the DMVs, for example. So they can then connect the scan of your face to the image in the DMV database of your license itself. And that's how they do it. But part of the reason it's important to be that the government be one part of it and a company be, or a separate entity be the other, is your identification happens without the government. So when your ballot gets to the government, they have your ballot, but they don't know who you are. You've been already verified separately by somebody else. So that's what ensures the anonymity of your ballot.
Mark, if Bradley hired you as a consultant and you're getting like a Hunter Biden Burisma rate, 50 grand a month, so your heart's all in it, who would you identify as the biggest, besides skeptical public, what interest groups or political actors do you think might oppose this?
I think, well, there's a broader question here of like, why can Florida, one of the top three or four most populous states in the country, count their votes on election night and have a decisive winner, and then California takes weeks and months?
Yeah.
And I think finding out the answers to questions like that and presenting that to the public, I think that's how you can convince your skeptics.
Yeah.
Like
Steve,
what doesn't work and why not?
Yeah, for sure. And just to be clear, like, while again, mobile voting is not meant to take away any current form of voting, it is obviously easy to count the votes very quickly when they're cast that way.
Steve, would the political parties, do you think, oppose this?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think as we've seen with campaign finance reforms over the years, the establishment of each political party tends to look through this lens of what does it mean for me?
Yeah.
As opposed to what's good public policy or what's good to get more people involved.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of people would sort of look at it that way, which again, I think they should just look at it like the more people involved, the better, and the more people we get to make our case to. But my guess is both political parties would be suspicious.
Yeah. Bradley, if people want to know more about this, where can they go?
Two things. You can go to mobilevoting.org, learn a lot on there. Also, I just did a TED talk on it that came out today on YouTube and on TED about a week ago. So if you get, it's 11 minutes, I think it's not bad. So certainly worked really hard on it. So if you get a chance to watch that, it'll give you a sense of what we're trying to do.
You tell any jokes in your TED talk?
I got a few minor laughs, but I would say the advice that I generally got was to try to not be too funny.
Okay. And if people want to help you, if people believe in this, what can they do?
So on mobilevoting.org, you can sign up to volunteer. And the real thing we're going to need from people is it's going to take a really big grassroots movement to get this done, because to Steve's point, the parties are looking at it from the perspective of what benefits them. And I think that if you know how to win in low turnout elections, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a union or a lobbyist or a business group, you might not want to change that because you like things the way they are. And so they're only going to do it if they're forced to. And that's going to require ultimately millions of people to weigh in with their elected officials and say, I want the right to vote on my phone.
Okay. The link to Bradley's organization and the TED Talk on YouTube will be in my Substack coming out later today. We'll also tweet it out from the two-way account. And if you're watching this, it's in the chat here on two-way, and I believe also in the YouTube chat. If not, it will be soon. Bradley, grateful to you for coming and making
Thank
time.
you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. Steve, good seeing you again. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. And thanks to Mark and Steve, and then their castmates of our pop-up focus group that we did to sample opinion on what's going on with Epstein. And as I said, there's some other stories going on today, but felt Epstein had critical mass, and eager to hear what Steve and Mark said. Gentlemen, always delighted to have you on. Please come back regularly.
Great. See ya.
Thanks, Mark.
And
Thanks,
Steve, we're all very impressed you spent 7 hours voting in a local election in a blue state. Do you know, is your candidate going to win?
it's a special elect. I assume she'll win, but in special elections in low turnout, you never know.
Okay. And everybody, again, congratulate Steve on his recent nuptials, because the parties never stop. Every time I look up, there's some additional wedding party for Steve, none of which I've been invited to, but I'm enjoying vicariously. So congratulations.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thank you both. And thanks everybody who participated tonight, and for everybody being part of Two Way. Very grateful to you. I'll be back 9 a.m. tomorrow with Sean and Dan on the morning meeting. And right now, switch over to Michael Moynihan, the Moynihan Report, and with his guest, whose name is Sam Tenenhouse, who I know. Sam has written a great new biography of William F. Buckley. So please go watch the Moynihan Report right now. Thank you for watching this program, and I'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern. Have a good evening.